Are you feeling worn down by the daily grind of parenting, work, and endless family stress? In today's episode, we're talking about why so many families are struggling to communicate and what's really behind the emotional exhaustion, and how learning to pause, feel, and reset can create the calm you've been craving. Stay tuned. Welcome to Fulfillment Therapy. I'm Kendra Nielsen, wife, mom, and licensed therapist. Do you ever feel like you're doing everything right, but you're still exhausted and empty? Did you think life, marriage, and parenting would be simpler and more rewarding? Sometimes you just want to crawl back into bed and lose yourself in screen time and chocolate, rather than face that personal or family stress. You are not alone. This podcast helps you break free of the rat race and build a richer, more meaningful life, flourishing incrementally and realistically, improving your mental health and wellness, and living with deeper purpose beyond the mundane, no matter where you are in life's journey. Welcome back to Fulfillment Therapy. Today we have a special guest here with us, Gayle Alexander. She's a licensed professional counselor and approved clinical supervisor. She's the owner and clinical director of Project Safe, strategies aimed at family empowerment, and employs other LPCs and provides clinical experience with supervisors to residents and graduate interns. She works with clients to help them empower themselves through stress tolerance, body work, and emotional regulation. Gayle works with teens, young adults, families, and group therapy. So I'm really excited to have you on the show today. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Kendra. Thank you for having me. I love what you're doing about just finding ways that people can feel fulfilled and move forward with great strategies. So thank you for having me today.
Of course. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you at and how did you get into this space?
I was raised in a very loving home, but a bit of a sheltered home. And it was back in the time where people didn't really go to therapy, and if you did, it was maybe religious based. So I really came out of my young adult life realizing that, gosh, I wish I had someone to talk to and people that could have just helped me solve problems. So as I got into my adult life and actually had my own children, I knew I wanted to go back to grad school. And so I went and got my therapy degree, and then we opened Project Safe. And with the goal that we wanted to make therapy not stigmatized and accessible. The other piece that we found was really missing was this connection to people might be in therapy, but no one would know. The teachers wouldn't know, and you didn't want to talk about it. And so family therapy is so great because it takes the, hey, what's wrong with my kid? It's a family systems piece. And then we've also included more communication as well as group dynamic. Group therapy is great because the kids come in and learn they are not alone. And I think that's been really powerful because I'll get a lot of teenagers and young adults that come to me and say, I'm the only one going through this. I'm the only one that feels so anxious, or I'm the only one that's not being academically successful. And as we know, that's just not true. So I think there's a sense of community and communication and openness that I'm seeing. It's more okay to not be okay these days. So that's what brought me into this space as my career.
Yeah. And I have to ask, I've heard a lot of the statistics and everything that group therapy is very beneficial and in many cases more beneficial. But I've always wondered with teens, with group therapy, do you ever find some negatives with that? Like maybe they feed off of each other and over-identify with some of those problems. Do you see that at all?
Yeah, a little bit. And you'll definitely see that in more what we call stepped-up care, like outpatient or residential treatment. They're very careful about having real strict rules so that kids don't feed each other unhealthy coping mechanisms. So one of the things that we do in groups is you can really talk about almost anything within reason. You cannot talk about harmful behavior, and we might talk more in generalities. And so we definitely have some guidelines of how that works so we can correct people. If somebody talks about maybe an eating disordered behavior, we can pause and say, all right, let's talk about the negatives of that and process it in a group environment so it doesn't trigger somebody else. back in the beginning of Project Safe, we actually would have, here's the ADHD group versus here's the anxiety group. And we actually found that to be not productive. A couple of reasons. One, the kids didn't really like being labeled in that way. And to your point, Kendra, then you had everybody in there feeding off each other. So now what we do, it's really more age-based and gender-based groups, like middle school girls, middle school boys, high school girls, high school boys. So you've got the anxious kid sitting next to the depressed kid, sitting next to the ADHD kid, sitting next to the kid on the spectrum, and maybe next to the kid whose parents are just going through a divorce. And that's more like life because that's what they're seeing in school. That's what the lunch table is looking like. And so one, it allowed them to appreciate differences, and everybody has different circumstances, but maybe we're all going through it together. Maybe the anxious kid and the depressed kid both come away going, oh, your parents take your phone at 9 o'clock at night, make you put it in the kitchen. Oh, it's not just my parents. So that I think was a better strategy to your point. So they didn't feel labeled and stuck in their, what they would consider their dysfunction. So we really try to use more solution focused. But so while the concept is that you can talk about whatever you want, you cannot talk about unhealthy mechanisms. We're going to put a kibosh on that. And I have lots of leaders in those groups as well. So everybody gets a lot of attention and we have lots of people to come in and say, whoa, let's talk about what you just said. And then we can process it. So that's not a bad thing. But yes, you have to be really mindful of that in a group dynamic.
I imagine that's very beneficial for the teens. And I'm curious, do you have very much for the parents? And if so, how did they respond to group therapy?
We don't have as much for the parents because what we found is they are so spread thin and they are more inclined to do services for their children than they are for themselves. It's another expense and time commitment that we have not had. We've tried doing workshops or parent things and we have not had success because they don't have the energy or the time or the money for it. They're willing to do that for their kids and they're not willing to do it for themselves. Now, having said that, I now have a young adult group, but that's a little bit different. And I do have an adult support group that's really more about body image and weight management and sort of healthy lifestyle. And so we've morphed into that. But I find that the parents that are raising kids don't have the time and energy for it. And it's a great point, Kendra, because we've talked a lot. So many parents need support. So what I do, though, is I'll find a lot of parents will come in and do a parent session with me. And maybe we'll do more family work. And so that's a great way to support those families that maybe aren't going to come to a group dynamic just because it just feels too much to add to their plate. But I wish they would because I do think there'd be some connection of, gosh, this is hard for kids today. And, hey, if we could all get on the same page of what the rules are with social media and devices, that would be a benefit to these parents for sure. So you raise a really good point on that one.
Yeah, and modeling that for our kids. It's unfortunate that's the case, but I'm sadly not surprised.
Yes, exactly. And I think, too, social media and just devices caught everybody by surprise. It moved so fast. And just as we're getting a little bit of a grip on that and having like real longitudinal data come in and we're seeing the harm of it, AI has shown up. We have a whole nother burst of technology that we're going to have to figure out the minefields of that, how to control that. But one of the things that I am starting to do is we will give talks to parents going into PTSA meetings, helping guide those families to know, like, what are other families doing? What are the structures? Because I do think that if we could get a little bit more on the same page, if everybody had that rule that you don't have a smartphone until a certain age, you might have a cell phone. A lot of kids, parents are working, so I do understand that, but they probably don't need the smartphone feature, right, until they get into high school, and then having it be that now states are changing the law that you cannot have cell phones at school and changing laws of how old you can be on social media. Once that gets more normalized, it will be better for the parents raising younger kids. It's tough for the parents raising the middle school and high schoolers right now because everybody's had it. And you have some families that kids have total access. And then you have families that have stricter access. It'd be great to have everybody more on the same page. That'll normalize it for the kids and they won't feel left out, won't feel like they're the only ones that have the strict parents. So I'm hoping that's where that trend goes.
I love when guests come on and talk about these things because this is what I want to advocate for so much more because you see how it's impacting like my clients as I'm interacting with all of them. This is such a big deal. If you wouldn't mind sharing some of those things that you see how this adversely impacts teens or even otherwise, especially when you said devices, social media, AI. I'd love to hear anything you have to share.
Yeah. And I'll start by saying, look, the one thing we know is technology is here to stay. It's
Right.
not going to go away. We're not going to go backwards. So we have to figure out how to manage it and not necessarily. I think when you come at kids with this is evil and bad, they're going to get defensive. So I think kind of start by understanding that we all like our devices. We all enjoy them. We all use them, but it's about balance. So that's piece number one. I think the other piece is, well, what we find is hey, we're living in a world where we can be as connected as we want, right? But we're seeing a loneliness epidemic because kids are hiding behind their screens. So instead of leaving their house, they'd rather FaceTime their friends. And again, sometimes that's appropriate and wonderful, but then they have a tendency to isolate and not get out. Other thing that you see with social media is, of course, the comparison, right? And then what happens is it comes into what we call a scarcity mindset, which is, it means, oh, I am never going to be okay. I'm never going to have friends. I'm never going to do well in school. I'm never going to have a significant other. Or with the older young adults, I'm never going to get that job. I'm never going to get that house, because they see everybody else either A, struggling, or B, getting what they want. They're like, things are just not working out for me. So I really think it sets up a very false narrative for teens and young adults about A, what is normal in life, and then B, how to go get it. If you're feeling sad and feeling like nothing's ever going to work, you have a really hard time taking an action step. And that comes back to learning how to manage uncomfortable feelings and continue to push forward. Nobody gets their perfect job right out of college. And most people struggle academically at one point or the other in life. That's normal. And so again, I hear a lot of kids say, I have to be perfect. So I think that has been part of the negative sides of social media, is this comparison that's brought about the scarcity mindset that makes these kids feel they're not good enough. And then they shut down and then they do anything. The other thing that I'll see is, I can't tell you how many kids come in and say to me, like, because I saw this on TikTok, I know I have this diagnosis. It doesn't work like that. And then the other thing is, that's very labeling. Maybe they do have anxiety. Maybe that was correct. But then what they do instead is, oh, see, I'm not going to be able to do anything. Oh, I can't do that because I have anxiety. I can't go talk to somebody, make friends because I have anxiety. Rather than saying, oh, there's my anxious thoughts and feelings. Oh, I recognize that makes me not want to go do this, but that's just my anxious thoughts and feelings. This is what I'm going to do anyways. And so I think it's pigeonholed them into, I have a diagnosis. There's something wrong with me. Oh, see, I can't do anything. Rather than using it to be like, oh, mindfully, oh, that's what's going on for me. Oh, now this is why I'm going to take this action step, because I recognize that's what's going on for me.
So almost that over-identifying with labels, and I see a lot too. A lot of them self-diagnosing. I was curious how AI would sneak in there, but I've had a lot of staffing things as other colleagues talk about things, but also my own experience, where they will take that to the next level. They'll search until they get the answers they want, and then they will treat that almost like this doctrine type of thing. Or they will even have AI create all their text messages for them and respond in this way where they're not really engaging. They're doing it all through AI.
You're totally right, Kendra. And there's actually a trend of having an AI best friend. So now you've got a kid who maybe struggled with some friendship issues. Now you've created an AI friend who tells you what you want to hear and is sympathetic and is never tired of hearing what you want to talk about. So it's not reality based. So I think you're right that they're losing their sense of imagination, sense of tolerance, tolerating discomfort. Like, I got to go talk to that person and make a real friend, as well as sense of discipline and moving forward, because they're so afraid that everything has to be perfect. That's why they're using chat boxes and AI to write their essays, to write their text messages and emails. And look, some of it is, hey, clean up this email, make it sound better. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but when it's writing it for you, now you don't have to think. You're actually not working the muscle of your brain, which is going to help you down later in life, because you're going to have to do that in college. Colleges are getting very strict about recognizing when somebody's used an AI format, and colleges are about teaching you to learn your brain. Even in high school, they're getting smarter and picking up when kids are using that. And so I think it's that balance of, when can it be helpful? let me just make sure the grammar was done right versus, oh, I want you to write it for me.
Right.
Really a dangerous trend. You're absolutely right.
Absolutely. So you work a lot with, like you said, parents and teens to improve. You talked about the scarcity mindset, problems that arise. Do you deal a lot with anxiety, or what are some of the things you see the most coming up?
Yeah, and I've been doing this 20 years, and certainly anxiety and depression have always been around. But I would say post-COVID, the level of anxiety, depression, self-harm has been through the roof. It's really an epidemic. And part of it is, as well, is then you couple higher levels of that with poor social skills, poor communication skills, and almost zero resistance, very little what we call distress tolerance. Look, I have anxiety, but if I get anxious, I've got to use a strategy to calm my racing thoughts. And I need to take an action step because I know, and again, obviously I'm older, so I figured this out, but I know that if I actually take an action step and face some of the things I'm anxious about, my anxiety comes down. So I've learned to manage it, move forward, because some anxiety and some sadness are absolutely healthy and appropriate. It makes you study for that test or apologize to a friend or problem solve. They've even linked some sadness to problem solving skills. But if it shuts you down instead because it's so overwhelming, then you don't gain any of those things. So you'll get right up to the, oh, I need to go take this action step, talk to the teacher and advocate for myself, or apologize to my friend, or talk to that person I want to get to know. You'll get right up to that edge and then you won't do it. That adds flame to the fire. So now your anxiety is even worse. And then of course, guilt and shame set in when that happens because now you feel bad. I couldn't do it. I'm never going to be able to do it. So it's really this level of what we also coin learned helplessness. So if I think that I'm not capable, but I don't take an action step to show that I'm capable, then I get exactly what I'm afraid of. I prove to myself, learned helplessness, that I'm not capable. Instead of being able to say, all right, maybe this is going to be a struggle. Maybe I'm going to fail along the way. Maybe I'm not going to be perfect, but I'm still going to try and move forward. And that's what I'm really trying to help teens and young adults and even families sometimes that are struggling, how to move forward with how they're communicating and how they're functioning instead of getting stuck and just like, they won't come to the dinner table. So what can I do? It's even in that category, it's like, how do you take that next step to make things happen? And it can be messy and not comfortable, and that's okay. And so that's what we're really working on.
Oh, I love what you're saying here, and I want to go into that a little bit more. I think you briefly said this, but what about that phrase, you're not broken and don't need fixing? Do you mind explaining that a little bit?
For sure. That was something that, and a quick side note, met my business partner in grad school, and unfortunately in 2020, he died of ALS. But so a lot of times you'll still hear me say we. He's very much part of who I am and part of the business. But when we first met in Open Project Safe, what we wanted was to, again, to take the stigma out of therapy, right? So again, what we would see is parents would bring a kid in, fix my kid. They're doing X, Y, or Z. So they become what we call the identified patient. And then, of course, the kid feels like it's all my fault. I'm a screw up. So we really wanted the message to be, you aren't broken, and I am not trying to fix you. Everybody has things that they need to work on. That's normal. That's appropriate. Hey, maybe it's a family systems issue. Maybe it's a school systems issue. Maybe it's a friend group issue. Maybe it's all three. But it's looking at more in a whole rather than just these little pieces. And so it's really about, there's nothing wrong with you. Like, you have a shy, introverted kid, they're never going to be the chatty Cathy, and no one should try to make them. That's not who they are. So I really want kids to know that I'm not trying to make you somebody you're not, but we also got to identify things that aren't working for you and be able to take action steps. So again, the motto was, you're not broken. You are who you are, but what's not working for you? And it's a phrase that this was a book that Oprah wrote with a PhD. Instead of saying, what's wrong with me? The question is, what happened to me? So that broadens it. Oh, there's not something wrong with me. Maybe I was born with anxiety. Maybe my parents went through a divorce. Maybe something else happened that has caused me to see the world the way I do. So let's work through that instead of you being a broken individual who needs to be fixed. That's a really powerful shift of saying it's not just you, it's the system. Let's look at the system and try to figure out where the system isn't working. And that kind of helps kids, I think, not feel shame and guilt about the stuff they're struggling with.
I love when that shift happens. We all need reminders for that, but instead of going to shame and guilt, going to that curiosity, that openness. Like, what is this about? I remember that book as well. So,
yeah. Yeah. And they really are stuck in that shame and guilt. Someone's going to find out I'm not as smart as people think I am, or people actually think I'm weird. They're not really my friends. They're faking it. They're just being nice on the surface. So again, we all have self-doubts. We all wonder, did I say the wrong thing, or did I come across weird? Like that's not abnormal. That's a normal thought pattern. But they get really stuck there, as well as not just stuck there with the questions, convinced it's true. And you have to, what are your facts? Where's the logic behind that? That's a feeling you're having. That's really true. But do you have any evidence that all your friends hate you? Probably not. So I think it's really about getting unstuck. And that's really hard.
So, Gayle, as we're talking about this, and then also AI, social media, devices, this new world, how we can help our teens in better ways, I feel like for decades now, parents feel like they can never keep up with all of the tech or relate to their kids when it comes to all these new advances. Like, we're just never going to be where our kids are. I always hope that we can help them in effective ways. Maybe some of the things you've already mentioned, but any other ideas? Because I know even my 4 or 5 kids with my exchange student, I'm always floundering a little bit. Like, okay, what boundary is fair? What is too much? What's too controlling? Too passive? Can you give us any guidance?
Absolutely. And I think what's hard about that is you've got 10 different ways of parents doing it. So, your kids, everybody gets to do this. You're so mean. And so I think number one is, my phrase always was, it doesn't matter what other families are doing. This is what our family does. And period. This is what our family does. This is what I'm doing, even though we know that some families are doing it as well. But that's just that better strategy of, I'm not worried about what Johnny's family does. This is what we do. And I think it's okay. They absolutely can have some scroll time and some time on their devices. Nothing wrong with that. But you need to set really strict limits as to when they can be on it and when they need to be off of it. And being off of it because they need to get ready for bed, but also being off of it so that we can come connect as a family. And again, I'll hear a lot of families say, I can't get them out of their room. I can't get them off their devices. And no shade, I know that's really hard, but you're the parent. So it's perfectly okay to say, shut them down, turn them off. If they won't, disconnect the Wi-Fi. And there's a lot of cell phone companies that you can call and say, this is what I want my kid's cell phone turned on and off. Now, the hope is to not have to be that micromanagey about it. But in the beginning, there's nothing wrong with having to do that. For parents with younger kids, my advice is get control of it early. Set very strict limits. You have all passwords and all logins that they can't have. That upper high school, yeah. Then you're going to start, they should have more freedom on that. Absolutely. Until something happens, and then all freedom is gone. If there's a reason for concern or something has happened, then that privilege is gone. It's out the door. So I think it's about recognizing, when do you spend time off the devices? Hey, you want to scroll around and FaceTime your friends or whatever? Anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on maybe on the age of the kid, right? But after that, then the rule is you shut it down. And guess what? If you fight me on that and I have to go to these other extremes, then you're going to lose that device for 24 hours. And it should only be 24 hours. Parents, and I even remember back in the day when my kids were young, my kids are all adults, you'd be like, you're grounded for a week. Okay, you really probably were not going to do that. So a good rule of thumb is it's 24 hours. Tomorrow, it's a reboot. We're going to do this again. But if I come to you and say, shut your phone down, and you don't do it, then another 24 hours. If that pattern continues, then maybe we're going to say, now it's 2 days. Now it's 3 days. You can extend it. But you're really showing the kid, hey, we're coming off of this because we want to connect as a family. And dinner time shouldn't be, tell me everything negative in your world. It should be more of a connect, like, hey, what's going on? What was fun today? What was not fun today? So make dinner time more. It shouldn't be the grilling session. But the other thing I work with families on is parents do need information. What is on your list for this week? What is the homework that you have? So again, these check-ins where kids are like, I'm not going to tell you. No, that's not up for debate. You need to put your phone down, shut it off, or do whatever. We're going to talk for 10 minutes about what do I need to know, what's going on. So I think it's these built-in times of connecting as a family, watching a show together, which again is technically a device, but at least you're together playing a game and just talking, going for a walk. Like, how do we connect as a family? And it doesn't mean that they never get social time and downtime devices. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think we need less of it. Again, the average, if you look, and I don't remember the number right offhand, but the amount of hours each kid is on devices every day, not counting schoolwork, it'd be like 4, 5, 6, 7 hours. It should be anywhere half an hour to a couple of hours, depending on the age of the kid. The younger the kid, the less they should have that. And then they should be more educational. And then as they get older, it can be more of that social piece, but within limits. So I think that's the big thing. It's just set timers, set limits, make rules very clear in your family, and that parents, this is you get to make these decisions. The kid does not get to make these decisions. You do. And that there are ways to put supports in place. Like you can have a phone because you need to reach me after school to get a ride home, but I've limited other things on it. Under the ages of 13, 14, there's really no reason to have a smartphone. You can have a cell phone, but not a smartphone. And then as they get between 13 and 16, I think parents need to have passwords. They need to be checking their kids' accounts. They need to recognize that kids can create second accounts that parents don't know about. And again, then the rules, if you do that, because that's not okay in our family, then you're going to lose that privilege. Yeah. And that what I hope keep kids on track.
Thanks for joining us for part 1 of this powerful conversation about emotional awareness and family connection. It's such an important step towards family fulfillment. If you're ready to deepen your own emotional resilience, check out our courses and upcoming group coaching opportunities, or follow us on Instagram and Facebook for weekly inspiration. You can also email us at hello@fulfillmenttherapy.org if you'd love a free coaching call that could even become part of a future episode. We'll see you back here soon for part 2. Hey friends, if you enjoyed this episode, a quick 30-second share can help someone else find support and help this podcast grow. Leaving a review on Apple Podcasts boosts visibility and keeps the show alive. Your simple acts make a big difference. I'll see you back here each week for more life-changing episodes.